many in this country seem to think, people think that the word socialism is a bad word, but it's only been used politically as a demon, like, as a boogeyman, since probably about the 1950s, right after the war, when the USSR and the Cold War and all that stuff began. But before that, there was a sizable socialist party in America, and the ideas behind the philosophy of socialism aren't what everybody seems to think they are a lot of times. And you guys know how I love my Jubilee videos, so we're going to go over this Jubilee video of can socialists and capitalists find middle ground? And I think there's a stepping stone somewhere in there, but we'll just take a look at this and see what's up.
We actually aren't looking for a middle ground with capitalism. We're not looking for a lighter, gentler oppression, exploitation, racism. We are seeking revolution.
We brought socialists and capitalists together to speak dialogue about their differences and similarities, I think is what it said. Okay, so here, hold on, I want to go back to this. This is the definition of socialism: economic system characterized by collective ownership of workers and workers' self-management of the means of production. That means the workers themselves, the people who do the jobs, own the means of production. It's more of a collective environment where the heads of the companies, the heads of the corporations, the people in power were voted in by the collective power or collective voice of the workers themselves. And capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and operation for profit, which leads to exploitation in many ways. We'll talk about that.
My name is Liberty. I'm studying psychology at UCLA. I'm 20 years old.
I'm Sean. I'm 24 years old, and I'm in the Socialist Party.
My name's Mimi. 2016, I was the Socialist Party's presidential candidate.
I'm Shay, and I'm with the Socialist Party, and I'm 28.
My name's Jack. I'm 19. I go to community college.
My name's Richard, 19. I go to Cal State Long Beach as a chemistry major with a music minor.
I get my socialists on the left and my capitalists on the right. Humans are inherently selfish.
Selfishness is sort of one word for it, but looking out for yourself.
It's funny that they say, like, okay, so humans are inherently selfish. So they agree to this, that humans are inherently selfish, yet they want to go with the system that exacerbates that greed. They want to go with a system that unchecks that greed as much as possible. So it's funny that they're saying, oh, we're inherently selfish, so we want a system that's going to let us take advantage of people as much as humanly possible. All right. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Your own survival and your own gain. And of course, that includes the gain of those you love, is one of the main motivators of people.
A really good way that we could figure out human nature is by comparing it to animal nature and stuff like that. And you see, animals doing whatever they can to survive. It's just culture that has changed us. But I believe at its core that, yes, humans, just like any other animal, are selfish.
But that's not necessarily the case. He says that, like, humans just like any other animal. What about bees? What about bees? Are bees selfish? What if one of them wants to be the queen and he's a drone? It's not going to happen. It's just comparing the animal world to human beings just doesn't make sense.
I work with children,
right there.
and my experience of working with people who have been acculturated or have been into this idea that they need to be selfish all the time are generally not. Every organism has to have a sense of like getting resources for itself in order to survive, but that's much different than being selfish, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think even if you spend any time in a social democracy, let's say you go to Norway and you spend time there where the people see the collective good as tied into their own personal well-being. I think we have so many examples like that in society.
And that's the thing, is that, a system where it promotes the universal well-being of everybody as opposed to the individual well-being of each person, dependent on how much they can stab the other person in the back. It tends to lessen the need for inherent selfishness, inherent greed. it gets rid of that need for greed because everybody has those abilities. I mean, there's still going to be some levels of it, but not anywhere near as much as with some of the unchecked capitalist
Just working
systems.
collectively toward a greater good.
The thing about the Nordic countries, in my opinion, is, well, since they're very, very ethnically homogenous, they all have very, very similar culture. It's not an accurate representation of, what humans inherently are, because I believe that culture can mask human nature.
So you think that diversity would work against working in harmony toward a collective good?
In diversity, we have different ideas of what good is.
I think competition
No,
brings out the
again,
best.
there is objective good and bad. I mean, and through this, it's and this is a perfect example of that. It's having as much freedom as you possibly can for yourself without infringing upon the freedoms and the rights of anybody else, right? That there's a balancing system there, and that's you can get the most amount of freedom for everybody out of that, the most amount of liberty.
Best in people.
Especially when we're competing for something like, let's try to create this compound that could help the masses in some kind of health relation form. You have all these research labs trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to figure out this process.
Wouldn't it be more efficient if they worked together and put their collective goals together to find those compounds and things like that? These are the same people that say, two heads are better than one, but then they'll turn around and say, oh no, yeah, competition. No, if you have 12 football teams and one has the best quarterback and one has the best running back and one has the best, best linebackers, whatever, and you go through and you put all of those teams together and then you take the best players and you put them onto a project like, the starting football team, that's going to be a better team than if you were to have those teams play each other separately, wouldn't it? I mean,
What's the most efficient way to do this? I think we need more of that sort of sense of competition, especially in the sciences and whatnot.
We frequently hear about the evils of monopolies. It's because, when you control an entire market, why even bother being better at anything?
That's the problem with capitalism, though. Once you get to a certain level, you can take out the competition. You can get rid of it. There wouldn't be such thing as monopolies if there wasn't capitalism. That wouldn't be a thing.
You've got no competition. You've got nothing to strive for, and no one can choose anything else.
I agree with you both on the examples that you gave, but the thing that I'm kind of struggling with, if we're talking about efficiency, quality, then yeah, I think it brings out the best in people, but then again, it tends to bring about greed.
You all do such a great service. It's a trip to me because, as you're likely aware, that there's this growing support for socialism, an economic system that places people over profit, that you're willing to continue to throw out the same talking points that have failed people so miserably. Again, it's a benefit to us, and I guess we should say thank you.
Nice.
If you care about something, if you're passionate about something, you don't need the threat of someone doing it better than you to do the best that you can do at it.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not doing this for profit right now. I'm not sitting, on the stream talking to a couple of people who decided to join me for profit. Like, there's other ways I could go out and be making money in other ways. Trust me, in cutthroat ways. I have the ability to do that. I have the intelligence to do that, but I refuse to because of my moral value. I do this because I'm passionate about it. And because I'm passionate about it, maybe someday it will pay off, and then I'll be able to make a living off of it. But as of right now, I'm doing it because I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about the things that I'm talking about. I'm passionate about the subjects and passionate about bringing out the truth in the world. This system that we live in, as far as capitalism, where you step on other people's backs to get ahead, just doesn't appeal to me in any sort of way whatsoever.
Ask any creative, competition leads less to excellence and more towards doing whatever you can to edge past the other person.
Today, everyone has the opportunity for success.
All right, if we're talking about the United States and we're talking about financial success, then yes, I would believe so. If we're talking about the world, it doesn't necessarily have to mean...
Okay, so you think everybody in the United States has the ability for financial success? Like the same ability? Like, is it going to be easy for the Vietnam vet who has PTSD and is missing a limb and living on the street? Is it going to be, easy for him to find market success next to a trust fund kid who was sent to an Ivy League college and owns, stock in several companies and runs a tech division? Like, I mean, that's just to even say that is ignorant to other people's positions.
Financial well-being or like stability, I think that it really just means how you're happy and how you're okay with yourself, and you make a goal and you pursue your goal, and if you fail or achieve it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I find that there are so many resources out there that you can enact on. It's just there's some people who just don't do anything about it.
And I think that there's too much focus on financial success as a whole. Too many people focused on making that almighty dollar instead of bettering the world for the sake of the human race in general, and bettering the world, for all of it. The reason that we have poverty and things such as that is because of the systems that are in place. I mean, of course, capitalism's better than feudalism, but look at the harsh conditions that most people had to live under feudalism. Capitalism made it a little bit better, but now we're backsliding into a place where things are becoming so divided that we're like wringing the poor people out on the other end and keeping everything for the rich people. To be honest, Derpshot, so he says I've seen people from rough backgrounds find financial success and embracing their background and contribute back. That is true to a certain extent. It's possible. Likely is a different story. I'm not saying that there's not a possibility for those types of things to happen, but the likelihood of them happening for any individual is a totally different story. Capitalism isn't inherently evil, and neither is socialism. Capitalism gave people in this country the option to make a living and do it. I was just saying that, like, it's better than feudalism. They're tools, but the tool capitalism is flawed and broken as of right now because there's no checks and balances for the people that are in control of the system. So they're able to make as much capital and hoard as much money as they want, to the detriment of the bottom half of the United States of America, because there's no checks and balances in place. All of those were ripped away during Reaganomics, and they've been continued to be eroded time and time again, no matter who's been in charge. There's no way for capitalism to work for the common man anymore. It's only going to continue to get worse to where it's only working for that percentage that is above the poverty line, or even above the middle class line. It's going to keep going that way, especially as we lose resources due to climate change, as we lose our place in the economy compared to China and other countries. The tool of capitalism itself is flawed. And I'm not saying socialism isn't either, because socialism was used as a vehicle for the USSR, but that wasn't true socialism. What that was like the communism that was skewed so that the people were taking power. Now, if this is done from you can't have socialism start from people that are already in power, or from power structure already there. It's got to start from the ground up. It's got to come from the ground up, because otherwise, there's a good chance that somebody will just try to seize the power for themselves. And that's what's happening in capitalism too, is that there's power being seized for itself. People are consolidating all the financial power into 0.1% of the population, and then they have their lackeys, which would count for probably about maybe 25 to 30% of the population, and everybody else can pretty much go fuck themselves, is how it's working. Now, if we had a system in place that was a middle ground of both, I think that we'd be a little bit better off. Like if we used checks and balances and had some of the ideas of social safety nets that socialism brings, and then some of the other things that capitalism brings. But I think that it's just a stepping stone. I think once we get to that point, then we'll realize that we don't need capitalism anymore, that we can build upon our society and prosper by communally working together to achieve our goals as a society and as the human race. That's not going to happen under capitalism. It's just not.
My first thought here with this question is, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So many people in this country who solely because they exist, they're under threat, whether it's through, the police, they're just trying to survive.
Everyone's very different. Again, everyone has different opportunities to what they can even consider success. In the US, though, there are a lot of opportunities for most people, though, of course, you can't say all, and there are always those who are extremely unfortunate and should be helped.
I'm sure every one of us has sat in a restaurant before or a Starbucks. Those people work their asses off. Any of these low-income jobs are not easy, and they work for pennies. If something goes wrong with their car, they're done. If they have a health problem, they're done.
Yeah, like right now, for instance, I have a tire I'm continually having to fill up with air over and over and over again because I don't have the money right now to get new tires on my car. So I'm spinning my wheels, like spending extra time to fill up this car tire over and over again because I know if it fails, then I can't get to work and I can't pay my bills. And then my kid suffers, and then my roommate suffers, and so I have to do this extra work, which is, and it's cold where I'm at, guys. It's cold. It's below freezing, and sometimes way below zero, where I'm at right now, and that can be very difficult and very trying. And that's just a first world problem. There's other things too, like just putting food on the table and stuff. I am one of those many Americans, and there are many Americans out there that are basically one emergency away from complete ruin. If I got, I'm not insured right now, which I'm trying to get through my job, but has been hard because the HR manager doesn't want to do anything about it. But basically, what I'm trying to say through this is that, some people get stuck in that position where you have to take a high risk to get yourself out of those situations. Like I could, possibly win the lottery or win some money from gambling or try to make it like leave and try to make it big in Hollywood or something along those lines. This is my risk right here, and I'm not even, I'm just using my extra time for myself to do this. But those things aren't going to be a definite, and I can't make those risks when I have a kid to feed and when, I have bills to pay and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not the same for everybody.
You're talking about financial success, though. Success is extremely relative and can be defined in many different ways.
In a capitalist society, though, isn't financial success the most important thing?
No.
I've worked in the food industry for a number of years, and I can not say that any one of my companions was ever happy to be doing that.
Yeah, and if they're going to school on top of that, so they're working full time, and on top of that, they're going to school and they're paying school.
I would consider that successful if you can go to school and you can maintain your GPA and you can also be working a part-time job and somehow affording your school. Yeah, you're doing well in life.
Society should help the underprivileged.
That sort of saying, if you give a man a fish, etc., holds true. And also, who should do the helping and how is very important. Not all acts of service are equally beneficial.
I would agree to that. I myself, I'm sorry to use a personal anecdote here, but I've personally dealt with the fact that, giving someone this much aid, they become lazy. My father is an alcoholic, so since due to an injury in his leg, he gets SSI. And what ends up happening is he receives enough SSI to the point where he's not motivated to do anything else beyond just going home, drinking a beer or something like that. And I think, yes.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that he's injured too? And he's put in that position where society makes him feel guilty for that situation, makes him feel like less of a man because of that? Those are all contributing factors.
People should help people, especially if they're underprivileged or they need the resources to push them. But to what end? That's the fine line.
But your personal anecdote only covers the small demographic of the alcoholic. Most of the people that
Every example you guys have brought up has been specifically about people who are particularly poor, when most of the country is lower middle class and up. That's
not a fact.
That's wrong, because that's what what it's framed as. But if you look at the numbers, anybody who makes under $50,000 a year is pretty much considered lower middle class at this point because of the raise in food costs and the cost of living and everything else. And to make below $40,000 a year is basically a poverty sentence. Even in my state, which is pretty, got a pretty low cost of living for the most part.
But that you would focus on this in a city, one, that gives more than half of its budget to the police, in a country that just passed a military bill, a spending bill, that's almost $1 trillion. That money goes to defense contractors.
The government paying for things is not capitalism.
But we're in a capitalist system.
Where the government pays huge amounts of money
the
for the things
military.
you're talking. Yeah, I'm not in
Right.
favor of those things.
How about instead of spending the money on the military, how about putting those back into basic needs, healthcare, education, housing?
I agree. The government taking our taxpayer dollars and funneling it into, they're paying for things that the military explicitly says that they don't need. That's not, capitalism is about prices and transparency and choices. When the government takes our money and buys
This
it
is
because
actually an
they
example of
decide.
capitalism working.
That is not, that might be
system.
what you call capitalism, but when I
It has
come
to
here saying
accumulate.
I'm a capitalist, I'm not saying I'm in favor of that.
Profit and ethics.
But that's
are
okay.
opposing
But
motives.
she may not be in favor of that, but that's the system that she's repping. I mean, that's the end result of the system she's repping, is defense contracts. I mean, what he didn't go into is that defense contracts are all about money, and if those companies like Lockheed Martin and other companies like that don't get their fucking contracts, then there's hell to pay. And so therefore the military budget goes up every year. It's the same thing with our health system that's for profit. Look at the drug costs here compared to how they are in other countries that have a more socialist healthcare system. They're skyrocketed. You can go to Canada, and Bernie Sanders proved this. You can go to Canada and buy insulin for a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for it here. So yes, that is capitalism.
I think it's core to profit. You have to exploit. And again, there is nothing ethical about exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think. I'm really having trouble thinking of a situation where someone could profit off of something without exploitation being in the mix, and I'm running out of ideas.
If you're running a business and you're the one up top, you would obviously walk away with more money if you pay your employees a little bit less.
I think that profit and ethics can be intertwined when seen with the corporate social responsibility module. When they treat their employees better, they give them more benefits, they raise their wages, and in turn, it motivates the workers to work harder. And
Treating your employees.
But that's no different than if the means of production were owned by the employees. They would still balance that out. I mean, they would still want to put effort into R&D or productivity as much as they would in their salaries, because they know if the productivity goes up, their salary is going to be able to go up. But if the company fails, they're screwed. So you balance those things, in socialism as well as in capitalism. That's not a thing that is simply for capitalism itself.
Better than shit is not necessarily ethical. Like raising the quality does not mean that you've raised it to a sufficient standard of treatment. Because if you're paying someone less than a living wage, that is unethical.
all I'm saying is it is to some degree more ethical and can be seen as more ethical to be beating competition by raising the wages of your employees and giving them better benefits.
Also, one must be paid slightly less than they are making in worth for a company for it to be worth it to hire them at all.
If you can't pay your employee the minimum amount of money that they need in order to live, you have no business being in business. And I think also there's a tendency from the conservative side to skew away from sort of objective fact. I mentioned the MIT.
Prescription costs, I don't think we disagree on. I pay $80 a month for Strattera. It went generic in 2015, and no one has a cheaper formulation yet. Only last year I had mail order and got it for $25 with shipping for a 3-month supply. I've been taking it since 2004. It was the same price even back then. I'm surprised it hasn't gone up, my friend. Yeah, I take quite a few prescriptions myself, and it's ridiculous. It's like you have to pay to live.
The living wage calculator, right?
Yes.
That's a scientific model,
Wow.
at $29.25. So as a company, if you can't afford to pay your employee a living wage, that's just the minimum that they need in order to live, right? Get the fuck out of business.
Why are we even talking to you when you have all the facts and we don't know anything?
I don't know.
It's hardly worth my time.
Well, we would, sure.
It's hard to really lean towards.
That's not an argument, girl. Like, that's not an argument. Like, why don't you educate yourself?
one side or the other if everyone is just sort of stating all these coherent biases and not accepting any sort of thing from any other particular side, which is why I'm sort of just, I'm trying to understand your side, and I'm trying to grasp really my side of it. And again, going back to sort of that mutual understanding of what can we do next? That sort of mutual understanding needs to be there if we're going to ever continue to see what's best for the U.S.
I think one reason why you often see like folks on the left, the socialists, communists, anarchists, et cetera, they're so passionate, and there is anger. Seeing the suffering and the oppression and the exploitation, the racism, et cetera, you sort of feel this urgency. Like we're constantly under sort of this self-criticism and self-reflection about like, well, how do you package what can be complex ideas into ways that are very palatable? And
That's me every hour.
and I think like if there's a failure on the left, that would be one of them.
I wish that rather than having an agenda that we try to prove and we see ourselves as winning by convincing the opponent, I wish that we could consider winning as finding the middle ground and finding where we're similar and finding the truth. I think if you're in the pursuit of truth, then you've won, contrary to convincing other people that you're right.
Despite that, we definitely disagree on pretty much everything. It's good to note that the real common ground here is we as like millennials and Gen Z and stuff, we're actually like talking about this, like whether we were able to convince the other side of anything or not.
Right, like, like 15 years ago, if you mentioned you were a socialist, you were ostracized from your community. I mean, it was like it was much more of a dirty word back then. And now I can freely admit that, I believe in socialism as over capitalism as a tool we need for our economic growth. But will it change anytime soon? Probably not in my lifetime.
At least we give a shit about it. This is stuff that we need to talk about. This is stuff that we need to be aware of, especially given our leaders. So, yeah.
All right, guys, that's a wrap.
Thank you.
That was a good video. I like that one. Capitalism hits medicine in the worst, in my opinion. We already have aspects of it with some government-controlled utilities, so I don't know what people are cringing about. Well, they don't think of it. They don't think of that as capitalism. They don't think of the police force or the fire force or power, water, plumbing, all that stuff. They don't think of that as socialism. They don't think of up until recently. Nobody thought of infrastructure as socialism, but just recently, and this is where the Republican Party is going. Recently, there have been people on the right, not necessarily politicians per se, because I don't think they're quite there yet, but a lot of right-wing pundits and a lot of right-wing talking heads are saying that the infrastructure bill that was proposed by Biden, the infrastructure bill that was pushed forward, is socialism. That building roads for people is socialism. That building and they're right, but what they're trying to say is that it's evil, that we shouldn't do it, that it should all go to private contractors and things like that. That's a dangerous and slippery slope there. And it's coming. Like they're saying any help to the common man whatsoever is socialism. But if you help the corporations and stuff and give them loopholes and bail them out, that's fine. That's not a problem. So we live in a pot called a kettle black society, my friends. That's what it is.